So here are the improvements that you can build on your land. So these are outside of cities. So it can even include hamlets and tribal villages, and towns. And the towns increase your commerce, of course, your production a little bit. And you can build water mills, you can build, there we go, you can build all sorts of stuff, including boats out in the water for doing fishing and things. They're distinct from your naval units, especially because you don't have to control them. So lots and lots of things that you couldn't build before. Offshore platforms, incidentally, are now constructed outside of your cities. They're not a city improvement anymore. Then you also have specialists. Some of these are, of course, the specialists from before, like scientists. But notice you don't have entertainers. You do have artists, and you have the great artists, great people, generally. These are also units, if we jump back to units, if you can see them here. What they do is they improve the output of your city in some area, like art, meaning culture, or science, for example. Now here are those unit promotions that I mentioned earlier. There are quite a lot of them, and as I said before, many of these do not apply to all units. Many of them are only available. In fact, all of them are available only to certain units. As I pointed out earlier, the bomber, for example, can't have any promotions. Then, speaking of unit categories, we also have these. So the different kinds of units, archery units, armored units, and so on. Some of these are just a matter of theory, basically. The archery units and the gunpowder units are basically used the same way. But melee units and siege weapons are distinct from each other, as are the gunpowder, armored, and archery units, which are very similar to the melee units. These units you use in the way you would in the older Civilization games. You just drive them into their target. But you can't use siege weapons that way. And that includes some of the ships, actually. Like, if I'm remembering right, the battleship can't do melee. And so you can only use siege weapons at a distance. And often on land, you have to have a unit to support them, another unit. So then we have civilizations. These are all the different civilizations included. It's actually fewer than in Civilization 3, but you could say the upside is that they all speak their real-life language. So in that way, they're a lot more interesting. And they have at least one, sometimes two, real leaders. So Alexander for the Greeks. It isn't clear whether they have another one here for them, but they do have, for example, Victoria and Elizabeth for the English, although not Churchill, Catherine the Great for the Russians, and Peter the Great of the Russians. And then you have, who's Cyrus? I believe Cyrus is a Persian. Yes, he is. He's another choice. Genghis Khan or Kublai Khan for the Mongols. Louis XIV or Napoleon for the French, even if Napoleon has his issues. Strangely enough, they kept Mao for the Chinese, in spite of his rather offensive history and reputation. They don't actually have Stalin for the Russians or Hitler for the Germans. They do omit them. They have Frederick the Great and Bismarck for Germany. And some familiar ones. Gandhi is still the choice for India. Default one, anyway. And Julius Caesar for the Romans. And yeah, some of the others are already well known, like Tokugawa for the Japanese, Alexander for the Greeks, Napoleon for the French. Napoleon was actually the original leader from Civilization 1. Then we have the list of religions mentioned earlier. You can choose any of these religions for your state or simply have free religion. Then you have the civics model, which is very complicated, actually. All these different policies can be adopted, influencing how your society runs. And you can't always roll back. If you make what you think is a bad decision, you can't always go back to something that you prefer. So if you are a democracy, well-established democracy, it's fairly difficult to go back to a monarchy, for example. Then you also have projects, which are basically wonders, like these, but they are very significant ones. So the Apollo program, the SDI project, the Internet and the Manhattan Project, and then your spaceship, parts, the spaceship parts. Then you have game concepts. This is familiar from past Civilopedias. So religion and culture are quite significant. Religion has always played a critical part in human history and so on. Religion in this game. So it says we offer no value judgments on religion. So you basically, this is very complicated here, but I mean, you could, when you get the game, you can read it yourself, but it's very similar to the diplomatic victory. So if we go to diplomacy, well, they don't have the diplomatic victory listed here. Let's see if it's under victory. There we go, victory. So victory conditions. So time victory, conquest victory, domination victory, cultural victory, space race, or diplomatic victory. So I'm not sure why they don't have religious victory on here. But it is true that you can dominate the world with your religion. That's one of the ways to score points in the game. Might be they don't have the official religious victory option until Civilization 5. But I think it's still possible with 4. At least de facto. So a lot of stuff in here. Let's see what else we've got here. And the hints are basically control hints, essentially. So other details. While I have the time, I might as well go back to the units again. So for one thing, you notice there are no paratroopers. That's really annoying. You have to install the add-ons for them, whereas in Civilization 2 and 3 they were given. I don't think even the Navy SEALs can paradrop, actually. But it's also not clear whether they have distinct swimming capabilities. I have never tried that. They are amphibious, like Marines, and they replace your Marines when you're the Americans, even if the U.S. Marines are quite famous in real life. So I guess I'm running out of time and should move to the next video here for a little bit more introduction and then the setup.